My daughter scoffed. Real men forgive cheating, as she stood in my living room, repeating her mother's poisonous lies. For 4 years, I'd swallowed my pride and let her believe I was the villain in our divorce. But something snapped inside me that day. I unlocked the drawer I'd sworn never to open and pulled out a flash drive. "You want the truth?" I asked, connecting it to the TV. "Just remember, you can never unsee it." Her smug expression vanished as the footage played, her perfect mother greeting strange men at our door. But that was just the beginning. When she saw where these encounters took place, her face turned ghostly white. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. Some secrets destroy more than just a marriage. My name is Adrian Cole. I'm 43 years old, divorced for 4 years now, and living in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Chicago. Not the life I'd planned, but we rarely end up where we expect. I was sitting in my living room, watching a baseball game I didn't really care about, when Jessica stormed in. My daughter, 20 years old and fiery like her mother, had been living primarily with Vanessa since the divorce. Our relationship had been strained, to put it mildly. Every visit felt like walking through a minefield, never knowing which step would trigger an explosion. "Dad, we need to talk," she announced, standing directly between me and the TV, arms crossed in that defiant pose she perfected as a teenager. I sighed, muting the game. "What's up, Jess? Why can't you just admit you overreacted? Mom told me everything." I felt my jaw tighten. "Did she now?" "She made one mistake, Dad." "One?" Jessica's voice rose. "And you threw away 15 years of marriage over it." I kept my face neutral, though my knuckles whitened around the remote. Vanessa's version of events had always been creative. "It's been 4 years," Jessica continued. "Don't you think it's time to grow up? People make mistakes." I stayed silent, which only fueled her frustration. "Seriously? Nothing to say." She threw her hands up. "God, you're so stubborn. You know what Mom says? She says real men can forgive their wives for cheating." Something snapped inside me. For years of silence. For years of being the villain in my daughter's eyes. For years of Vanessa's lies poisoning the one relationship I cared about most. Real men forgive cheating? I repeated quietly, setting down the remote. "Is that what your mother told you?" Jessica scoffed, her chin raised defiantly. "Yes, because it's true. One stupid mistake shouldn't erase years together." I stood up slowly, feeling oddly calm. "Sit down, Jessica." "I don't want to." "Sit down." My voice wasn't loud, but held an authority I rarely used with her. Surprised, she perched reluctantly on the edge of the couch, watching as I walked to the bookshelf across the room. "You want to know what really happened?" I asked, unlocking the small drawer built into the bottom shelf. "You think you know the whole story? Fine. Let's talk about your mother's one mistake." I pulled out a flash drive, one I promised myself I would never have to use. One I kept locked away, hoping this day would never come. "What's that?" Jessica asked, her defiance giving way to curiosity. "The truth," I said simply, turning on my laptop. "And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Are you sure you want this?" She rolled her eyes. "Whatever dramatic evidence you think you have." "Last chance, Jess," I interrupted. "We can forget this conversation, or I can show you exactly why our marriage ended." "Just play it," she demanded. As I connected the flash drive, I wondered if I was making a mistake. But Jessica's contempt for me had reached a breaking point. Sometimes the only way forward is through the painful truth. "Remember," I said as the video player loaded, "you asked for this." I pressed play and watched as my daughter's life changed forever. The screen flickered to life, showing the exterior of our old 2-story colonial in Oak Park. The timestamp in the corner read July 17th, 4 years ago. Jessica leaned forward, brow furrowed. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Just watch," I said. The footage showed our front door opening. Vanessa stepped out, impeccably dressed in the red sundress I bought her for her birthday. She checked her watch, scanned the street, then walked to the mailbox. "So Mom got the mail." "Shocking evidence," Jessica muttered. I said nothing. 2 minutes later, a silver Audi pulled into our driveway. A man I'd never seen before stepped out, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit. Vanessa smiled broadly, walking over to greet him. Their embrace lasted too long to be casual. Their kiss was definitely not friendly. Jessica shifted uncomfortably beside me. "One time, right?" I said quietly. "One mistake." So she kissed someone, Jessica said, but her voice had lost its edge. That's still just. I hit fast forward. Same day, different camera, this one inside our house in the hallway. The timestamp showed 30 minutes later. Vanessa and the man appeared, disheveled, laughing as they headed toward the kitchen. You had cameras inside our house? Jessica asked, horrified. Not originally. I explained. After I noticed certain patterns in your mother's behavior, I installed them while she was at her sister's for the weekend. Another click, another video. Different day, different man. This one younger, with a motorcycle parked in our driveway. Mom said it was one time, with her boss, Jessica whispered. A mistake. She said you overreacted. I let out a humorless laugh. I haven't even shown you the worst part yet. Jessica's face had paled considerably. There's more. Instead of answering, I pulled up another file. Our house again, 2 weeks later. This time, 3 men entered, none of whom I recognized. Vanessa greeted them like old friends. Jessica covered her mouth. No, I was in Seattle on business, I said flatly. You were at summer camp. Your mother hosted quite a gathering. The next clip showed all 4 of them heading upstairs. Stop it, Jessica said, her voice breaking. I get it. I closed the laptop. No, you don't. Not yet. But we could take a break if you need to. She stared at her hands, which were trembling slightly. How many? How many different men? In the 3 weeks I monitored, 7 different men. Some came multiple times. Jessica's eyes, so much like her mother's, filled with tears. But she told me. I know what she told you. I interrupted gently. She's been telling you her version for 4 years. Now you know mine. Why didn't you show me before? She demanded, anger returning but directed differently now. Because you're her daughter, I said simply. And despite everything, I didn't want to destroy that relationship. Jessica stood abruptly. I need some air. As she walked to the door, I called after her. Jess, there's more you need to know. She paused, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. Not now, she said, her voice unsteady. I can't. Not right now. The door closed behind her, and I was left alone with the evidence I'd hoped would never need to see the light of day. I gave Jessica space, knowing she needed time. The truth isn't always easy to swallow, especially when it contradicts years of carefully crafted lies. I made coffee and waited, hoping she wouldn't just drive away. 40 minutes later, she returned. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. The anger was gone, replaced by something harder to define. Confusion, perhaps. Betrayal. Tell me everything, she said, sitting down across from me. I nodded, sliding a mug of coffee toward her. I never wanted this day to come. Just tell me. I took a deep breath. I first suspected something was wrong about 6 months before our divorce. Your mother's behavior changed. Secretive phone calls, unexplained absences, working late when her office was already closed. The classic signs, Jessica said bitterly. Yes, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then I found hotel receipts for days she claimed to be at conferences. Credit card charges for restaurants in Chicago when she was supposedly visiting your aunt in Milwaukee. Jessica stared into her coffee. Why the cameras? Why not just confront her? I needed to know if I was crazy, I admitted. And if I confronted her without evidence, she would have denied everything. Made me the jealous, controlling husband. Like she did anyway, Jessica muttered. Then she looked up sharply. You said there was something worse. Something I needed to know. I hesitated. This was the part I dreaded most. It's about your room, I finally said. Her face turned pale. What about my room? Instead of explaining, I opened the laptop again and selected a specific file. The timestamp showed August 3rd, for years ago. You were at Lauren's house for a sleepover. I explained quietly. The footage showed Vanessa leading 2 men, not ones from the previous videos, up the stairs. They were laughing, drinking from wine glasses. Then the camera angle changed. It was Jessica's bedroom. No, she whispered, her face turning ashen. Not in my room. On screen, Vanessa led the men inside, closing the door behind them. Turn it off, Jessica said, voice cracking. Turn it off. I closed the laptop as she stood abruptly, knocking over a coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but neither of us moved to clean it up. In my bed, she cried, her voice rising. With my things everywhere. My childhood bedroom. I didn't speak. There was nothing I could say to make this better. Did this happen a lot? Jessica asked, wrapping her arms around herself. 3 times that I recorded, I said quietly. Always when you weren't home. Jessica's face contorted with disgust. Why? Why would she do that? I don't know. I answered honestly. I never understood it. She paced the room, trembling. You should have told me. Maybe, I conceded. But you were 16. You idolized her. I didn't want to be the one to destroy that. So instead you let me hate you for years. Her voice was razor sharp. Let me believe you were the problem. I had no defense. She was right. I need to talk to her, Jessica said, pulling out her phone. Right now. Jessica's hands shook as she dialed her mother's number. I watched her pace back and forth, running her fingers through her hair, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. Mom. Her voice was surprisingly steady. I need you to come to Dad's. Now. I couldn't hear Vanessa's response, but Jessica's jaw tightened. No, I'm not coming there. You need to come here. A pause. Because we need to talk, and it has to be here. Another pause. Jessica's knuckles whitened around the phone. I've seen the videos, Mom. Silence stretched on the other end, long enough that I could feel it from across the room. Just come over, Jessica finally said, hanging up before Vanessa could respond. She turned to me, eyes hard. She'll be here in 30 minutes. You don't have to do this today, I offered. It's a lot to process. No, Jessica snapped. I've spent 4 years believing her lies. For years treating you like garbage. We're settling this today. I nodded, understanding her need for immediate resolution. What do you need from me? She hesitated. Just be here. Those 3 words, the first indication in years that she actually wanted my presence, hit me harder than expected. We waited in tense silence. Jessica paced while I cleaned up the spilled coffee, neither of us knowing quite what to say. The doorbell rang precisely 28 minutes later. I opened the door to find Vanessa standing there, perfectly put together as always. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, not a hair out of place. She brushed past me without acknowledgement, her focus entirely on Jessica. Sweetheart, what's going on? Vanessa's voice was gentle, concerned, the devoted mother routine she'd perfected. Jessica stood rigid, arms crossed. I want you to explain why you brought men into my bedroom. Vanessa's composure flickered, but only briefly. I don't know what your father's been telling you, but I saw the videos. Jessica interrupted. The security footage Dad installed. I saw everything. Another momentary crack in Vanessa's facade. Then she turned to me, eyes flashing. So this is what we're doing now. Dragging her into our issues. Don't, Jessica warned. Don't make this about him. This is about what you did. Vanessa sighed dramatically, shifting tactics. Honey, that was years ago. A difficult time in our marriage. In my room. Jessica's voice rose. On my bed. With my things all around you. What? The directness of the question left Vanessa momentarily speechless. She looked around as if searching for an exit. I was unhappy, she finally said, her voice softening. Your father and I were having problems. And that justifies bringing strange men into your teenage daughter's bedroom? Jessica demanded. Vanessa's expression hardened. You're too young to understand complex adult relationships. Jessica laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. Is that really the best you've got? I'm too young to understand why my mother violated my personal space for her affairs. This conversation is inappropriate, Vanessa said sharply, shooting me an accusatory glare. He's manipulating you. Stop it, Jessica shouted. Just stop lying. I saw the videos with my own eyes. Outside, the sky darkened as storm clouds gathered, echoing the tension building inside my living room. Story 1. The betrayal next door. Vanessa's mask of maternal concern was slipping, replaced by something colder, more calculated. She turned to me, eyes narrowed. I hope you're happy, she hissed. Turning my own daughter against me with your edited videos. Edited? Jessica echoed incredulously. You think that's what this is about? Sweetheart, your father has always been good with technology, Vanessa said, attempting to regain control of the narrative. It's amazing what people can do with footage these days. I stayed silent. This wasn't my battle anymore. Show me more, Jessica demanded, turning to me. Let her try to explain it all away. I hesitated. Jess, are you sure? Show me. I opened the laptop again and played another clip. This one showed Vanessa leading yet another unfamiliar man into our bedroom. The timestamp showed a different date. That's Dr. Weber, Vanessa said quickly. We were discussing a charity auction. In our bedroom, I finally interjected. Before she could respond, I played another clip. And another. 5 different days. 7 different men. Jessica watched in horrified silence. Then she turned to her mother. Every time I called you from camp, she said, voice trembling. Every time you said you missed me so much. You were bringing strange men into our house. Vanessa's composure cracked. You don't understand what it was like being married to him, she snapped, gesturing toward me. Always working. Always distant. So you brought men into my bedroom. Jessica shouted. It wasn't about you. Vanessa shot back. The room went deadly quiet. Wow, Jessica finally said, her voice low. That might be the first honest thing you said today. Vanessa seemed to realize her mistake. Jessica, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Jessica interrupted. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about Dad. It was about you. It's always been about you. She stood up, grabbing her keys from the coffee table. Where are you going? Vanessa demanded. To pack my things, Jessica said flatly. I'm moving out. Don't be ridiculous, Vanessa scoffed. You're upset. I understand, but I'm not living with you anymore, Jessica stated firmly. I'll stay with Dad, or get my own place, but I'm done with your lies. Vanessa's face hardened. You're making a mistake. Jessica paused at the door. No, Mom. For the first time in 4 years, I'm seeing things clearly. She walked out, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the suddenly too quiet room. With Jessica gone, Vanessa's carefully constructed composure disintegrated completely. I hope you're satisfied, she spat, pacing my living room like a caged animal. You've finally gotten what you wanted. This wasn't about what I wanted, I replied evenly. This was about Jessica learning the truth. The truth. She laughed bitterly. You've been planning this for years, Adrian, waiting for the perfect moment to turn her against me. I shook my head. If that were true, I would have shown her those videos 4 years ago. She stopped pacing, glaring at me with undisguised hatred. What did you expect to happen? That she'd discover I'm not perfect and come running into Daddy's arms? I expected exactly what happened, I said. For her to make her own decision based on facts, not your fiction. Vanessa picked up her purse, hands trembling with rage. This isn't over. It is for me, I replied. It has been for years. After she stormed out, I sat alone in the silence of my house, feeling oddly hollow. There was no satisfaction in this victory, only relief that Jessica finally knew the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica at the house. Mom showed up. Things are bad. Coming back soon. I replied, take your time. Guest room is yours as long as you need it. An hour later, my doorbell rang. Jessica stood there with 2 hastily packed suitcases and a backpack, eyes red from crying. That was fast, I observed, taking one of the suitcases. Yeah, well, Mom made it easy, she said, her voice brittle. She tried to lock me out of my own room. I raised an eyebrow. She what? When I got home, she was already there. Jessica dropped her backpack on the floor. She said I was being dramatic, that I needed to calm down and think rationally. When I started packing anyway, she actually tried to physically block my door. Jesus, I muttered. Then she switched to begging, crying, saying I was destroying our family. Jessica's laugh was hollow, as if she hadn't already done that herself. I guided her to the kitchen, putting on water for tea. What changed her mind? I told her I'd call the police if she didn't move, Jessica said flatly. Told her I'd show them the videos too. I winced. That must have gone over well. She called me an ungrateful bitch, Jessica said, the words clearly still raw. Said she'd given up everything for me, and this was how I repaid her. Classic Vanessa, I murmured. Always the victim, never the villain. Jessica looked up at me, a new question in her eyes. All these years, why didn't you fight for custody? Why let me stay with her when you knew what she was like? It was the question I'd been dreading since this all began. Because she's still your mother, I said slowly. And because fighting her would have meant showing those videos to lawyers, judges, maybe even you. I couldn't do that to you. Jessica stared at her hands. So you let me hate you instead. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next few days were a strange adjustment period for both of us. Jessica moved into my guest room, hanging clothes in the closet that had been nearly empty for years. I found myself shopping for groceries I knew she liked, setting an extra place at the table, turning down my TV in the evenings. It was awkward at first, neither of us quite knowing how to navigate this new reality. We'd been estranged for so long that ordinary father-daughter interactions felt foreign. On the third night, I heard her crying through the wall. I hesitated outside her door, uncertain whether my comfort would be welcome. Before I could decide, my phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. Tell Jessica to answer her phone. This childish silent treatment needs to stop. I didn't respond, but apparently Vanessa had been bombarding Jessica with similar messages. 43 texts today. Jessica told me over breakfast the next morning, eyes puffy from crying. And 17 voicemails. You don't have to talk to her until you're ready, I said carefully. I know. She pushed her cereal around the bowl. I blocked her number last night. I nodded, unsure what to say. Jessica had been an adult for years, but in some ways, the emotional damage made her seem younger, more vulnerable. She emailed me too. Jessica continued. Said she's consulting a lawyer because you poisoned me against her with illegally obtained footage. I sighed. Classic Vanessa. When confronted with her actions, attack the evidence. Would those videos hold up? Legally? Probably not, I admitted. Recording in our own home was legal in Illinois, but using hidden cameras without her knowledge is a gray area. It doesn't matter, though. I never planned to use them in court. Jessica looked troubled. What if she sues you? She won't, I assured her. It's an empty threat. Taking legal action would mean acknowledging the videos exist, which would mean admitting what she did. You seem so certain, Jessica observed. I know your mother, I said simply. She's all about appearances. She won't risk her reputation. Jessica nodded slowly, then asked the question I've been dreading. What about my college tuition? Vanessa and I had agreed to split Jessica's education costs, but with this new development, all agreements were in jeopardy. Don't worry about that, I told her. I'll cover whatever she doesn't. Your education comes first. Relief flooded her face. Thanks, Dad. Then, hesitantly, can I ask you something else? Anything. When did you stop loving her? Was it when you found out about the affairs? Or was it before that? The question caught me off guard. I considered deflecting, but decided Jessica deserved honesty. It was gradual, I admitted. But I think I stopped loving the person she actually was once I realized she wasn't the person I thought I'd married. Jessica absorbed this, then nodded. That makes sense. She pushed back from the table. I have a final paper due tomorrow. Better get to work. As she left the kitchen, I realized it was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. 2 weeks after Jessica moved in, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with Lauren, her best friend since high school. They fell silent when I walked in, exchanging glances that suggested I'd interrupted something important. Don't mind me, I said, heading for the refrigerator. Just grabbing a drink. Actually, Dad, Jessica said, we were talking about you. I paused, bottle of water halfway to my mouth. Should I be worried? Lauren smiled, the first genuine smile I'd received from her in years. Not this time, Mr. Cole. I sat down, curious. Lauren had been firmly in Vanessa's camp since the divorce, treating me with the same cold suspicion Jessica had. I told Lauren everything, Jessica explained. Showed her some of the Tamer videos. Lauren's smile faded. I owe you an apology, Mr. Cole. I believed everything Mrs. Cole told us. You weren't the only one, I assured her. Vanessa is persuasive. That's one word for it, Lauren muttered. She's been texting me constantly, trying to get me to convince Jessica to come home. Jessica slid her phone across the table. Show him what she sent this morning. I scrolled through a series of increasingly desperate texts from Vanessa, culminating in one that made my blood boil. Adrian always had cameras everywhere. He was controlling, paranoid. Those videos are probably edited. He was always jealous of any man who looked at me. She's in full damage control mode, I observed, handing the phone back. It gets better, Lauren said grimly. She's been telling people you manipulated Jessica with fake videos, that you're trying to alienate her from her friends and family. Classic Darvo, Jessica said, noticing my confused expression. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. We learned about it in Psych class. I was impressed by her insight. Your mother's an expert at it. Well, it's not working this time, Lauren declared. In fact, it's backfiring. The more she lies, the more people are questioning everything she's ever told them. She called my cousin Tyler. Jessica added. He was so uncomfortable with how she was talking about you that he called me afterward to ask what was really going on. What did you tell him? I asked, curious about how Jessica was framing the situation to others. The truth, she said simply. That mom had multiple affairs, lied about them for years, and tried to make you the villain. I nodded, touched by her straightforward defense of me. Anyway, Lauren continued, I came over to tell you both that Mrs. Reynolds, remember, the gossipy one from the neighborhood, is spreading Vanessa's version all over Facebook. Jessica groaned. Great. Actually, Lauren smiled mischievously. It might be great. She's being so over-the-top dramatic that people are getting suspicious. When Mrs. Wilson questioned something, Vanessa completely flipped out, started accusing everyone of taking Adrian's side. The truth has a way of emerging, I said quietly, no matter how hard someone tries to bury it. Lauren nodded, then checked her watch. I should go. But Mr. Cole, I'm really sorry I believed the worst about you all these years. After she left, Jessica looked at me with a small smile. You're winning people over. Without even trying. 3 months after Jessica moved in with me, things had settled into a comfortable routine. She was finishing her semester strong. I'd adjusted my work schedule to be home more, and we were rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. Then Vanessa showed up unannounced on a Sunday afternoon. I opened the door to find her standing there, impeccably dressed as always, but with an unfamiliar vulnerability in her expression. I need to talk to Jessica, she said. No greeting, no preamble. She's not here, I replied truthfully. Jessica was at the library, studying for finals. Vanessa didn't believe me. Her car's in the driveway. Battery died yesterday. She took an Uber. She tried to look past me into the house. I've given her enough time to calm down. This silent treatment has gone on long enough. That's not your decision to make, I said calmly. When Jessica's ready to talk to you, she will. Vanessa's facade cracked slightly. She's my daughter too, Adrian. You can't keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from anyone. She's 20 years old, making her own choices. Choices you influenced, she snapped, the vulnerable mask slipping further. You turned her against me with those invasive recordings. I sighed. We both know what those recordings showed, Vanessa. Ancient history, she waved dismissively. One rough patch in our marriage doesn't negate 15 years of motherhood. It wasn't the affairs that pushed Jessica away, I said quietly. It was the lies afterward. And using her bedroom. Vanessa flinched at the last part, the first genuine reaction I'd seen from her. I've apologized for that, she said, voice tightening. It was inappropriate. Have you? Actually apologized to her, without excuses or deflection. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Jessica needs time, I continued, and a genuine acknowledgement of how your actions hurt her. Not just the affairs, but the years of manipulation, turning her against me. I never. We both know you did. I interrupted firmly. She stared at me for a long moment, then seemed to deflate slightly. Will you at least tell her I came by? Of course. As she turned to leave, she paused. You know, none of this would have happened if you just deleted those videos after the divorce. I shook my head, amazed by her ability to avoid responsibility. None of this would have happened if you hadn't brought strangers into our daughter's bedroom. She flinched again, then walked quickly to her car without another word. When Jessica returned that evening, I told her about the visit. Are you ready to talk to your mother? I asked carefully. She considered this, then slowly nodded. I think so. Not to reconcile, not yet, but to say what I need to say. Whatever you decide, I assured her. I've got your back. For the first time in years, I saw her completely believe me. 1 year after Jessica moved in with me, we celebrated with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. So much had changed in 12 months. Not just between us, but within each of us individually. Remember when you first showed me those videos? Jessica asked, twirling noodles around her fork. I was so angry. At me, I recalled. At everyone, she corrected. But mostly at myself for being so blind. I shook my head. You weren't blind. You were a daughter who trusted her mother. Jessica considered this. Maybe, but I should have questioned things more. You were 16 when we divorced. I reminded her. No teenager should have to navigate that kind of deception. She nodded, then changed the subject. I saw Mom yesterday. This surprised me. Their relationship had been cautiously rebuilding over the past few months, with occasional coffee meetings and supervised visits. How did it go? Better than expected, Jessica admitted. She's starting therapy. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. Vanessa had always scoffed at the idea of therapy, considering it a weakness. She says she wants to understand why she did what she did. Jessica set down her fork. I don't know if I believe her, but it's the first time she's taken any real responsibility. That's progress, I acknowledged. Are you thinking of moving back? Jessica laughed. No way. I'm exactly where I need to be. Relief washed over me. I'd grown accustomed to having her around. Her music playing from the guest room, her textbooks scattered across the dining table, her favorite cereal in the pantry. Besides, she continued, I start my internship next month. This place is way closer to the office. I smiled, proud of how she'd navigated the past year, maintaining her grades despite the emotional turmoil, securing a prestigious summer internship, rebuilding relationships on her own terms. Dad, she said, her voice softening, I never really thank you. For what? For waiting. For being patient. For letting me find the truth on my own terms, even when it meant being the bad guy for years. I swallowed the unexpected lump in my throat. You never need to thank me for that. Yes, I do, she insisted. You protected me from the worst of it for as long as you could. Then you stood by me when I finally faced it. That's what real fathers do. We finished dinner talking about lighter things. Her fall classes, my recent promotion, the movie we planned to see that weekend. The heaviness of the past had lifted, not gone entirely, but transformed into something we could carry together. Later that night, as I loaded the dishwasher, I found myself thinking about that day a year ago. Jessica standing in my living room, throwing her mother's words at me. Real men forgive cheating. She had been wrong then, but not in the way she thought. True forgiveness isn't about ignoring betrayal. It's about acknowledging the hurt, setting appropriate boundaries, and finding a path forward with dignity intact. Looking at the woman my daughter had become, strong, discerning, compassionate, I knew we'd both found that path.